Yes, thank you.
Okay, well, welcome everyone to tonight's meeting of the Finance and Governance Committee of Georges River Council. I declare the meeting open at 6:03 p.m. and we'll start with the acknowledgement of country. I would like to acknowledge the Bidjigal people of the Eora Nation, who are the traditional custodians of all lands, waters and sky in the Georges River area. I pay my respect to elders, past and present, and extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples who live, work and meet on these lands. Apologies. I think we have full council attendance tonight, so no apologies. And there's been no request to attend via audio-visual link. So we will move to the notice of live streaming of the committee meeting. Staff and public are reminded that this meeting is being recorded for minute-taking purposes and is also being webcast live on Council's website in accordance with Section 4 of Council's Code of Meeting Practice. And this recording will be made available on Council's website. And the Code of Meeting Practice, the order of business is as shown in the agenda, which has been made available, and staff and public are reminded that this meeting is open. Doors to the meeting room are to be left open unless the meeting moves into a closed confidential session according to Section 14 of the Code of Meeting Practice. Only if the meeting moves into a closed confidential session will the public broadcasting of the meeting be suspended. Council's Code of Meeting Practice prohibits the electronic recording of meetings without the express permission of Council, and mobile phones must be turned to silent during the meeting. Disclosures of interest. Do any councillors have any interest to declare? No disclosures of interest. Public participation on items in the agenda. Tonight there are no registered speakers for tonight's meeting. So we will move to the first item of business, which is the confirmation of the minutes of the previous meeting. Item FIN 030-23, confirmation of the minutes of the previous meeting held on 10th of July 2023. Councillors, can I have a motion? Moved by Councillor Ficarra and seconded by Councillor Marnie. Councillors, are there any questions or issues to raise from the minutes of the previous meeting? No, that being the case, we'll put the motion. All those in favour say aye. Aye. All those against? Declare it carried. We move into our committee reports. First item is FIN 031-23. That's the investment report as at the 30th of June 2023. Can I have a mover and a seconder? Move Councillor Jamieson. Yes. And seconded Councillor Ficarra. Thank you. Before we move to questions, just get the director here, just give us a very brief overview of the investment report, if that's okay.
Yeah, through you, Madam Chair, I'll refer that to the acting CFO, Scott Henwood.
Through you, Madam Chair. So year to date, we've hit about just over $6 million in interest income from our investment portfolio. So it's about $3 million higher than our adopted budget. So it's a very big improvement on the budget. At the time the budget was being done, we were having record low interest rates. So as you know, there have been lots of hikes this year, and that's sort of the driving force of that variance there. In the current year's budget, we've adjusted that to be more reflective of what's trending at the moment.
Excellent, thank you. Councillors, does anyone else have any questions? Councillor Jamieson?
Yeah, I've just a couple of questions. Excess performance, what is that? What do you mean by excess performance? So
number
5 on the report. And I think on point 3,
okay,
it said that it's negative 0.04% below benchmark.
So it's talking about in the investment performance commentary, Council's performance against the benchmark for returns of its investment portfolio for June 2023 are as follows, and it's got performance portfolio, performance index and excess performance.
Yes.
So you just want some clarification of what excess performance means.
Thank you.
Yeah. Can we refer that to the director?
Yeah, through you, Madam Chair. So the portfolio performance refers to our council's portfolio. Then the index is based on the Bloomberg Oz Bond Bank Bill Index, which is just like it's a standard benchmark that's, I guess, comparative for Australian-based investment. So it gives you a gauge of how your portfolio is performing relative to the market. Ours is in negative 0.404, mainly due to the fact that a year ago, it's been the fastest, I guess, we've seen the cash rate increase, probably over a 12-month period, as everyone would know, with the RBA going up regularly. So our term deposits that we may have placed 12 months ago, 18 months ago, we have to wait for them to expire to then place them into a new one that you probably would have been getting, well, maybe getting 1% or 1.5%. Now we'll probably get 4 to 5% for that same placement. But overall, like it is still immaterial. If it was probably -3, 4%, we might be looking to then break the term deposits or break the placements and then reinvest, but it's not sort of alarmingly below, and we'll see that turn around in the next few months. I don't know if you want to add anything.
No, I covered it.
Thanks.
Does that answer your question, councillor Jumper? Any other questions? No. Okay. Any other councillors? No. Okay, so we've got the motion that the investment report as at 30th of June 2023 be received and noted by council. It's being moved by councillor Jamieson and seconded by councillor Facaria. All those in favour say aye. All those against? Declare it carried. Next item is FIN 032-23. It's the procedures for the administration of the social media policy for councillors. Councillors, if I could have a mover and a seconder, please. Councillor Jamieson, the mover.
Madam Chair.
Councillor Simonton. Seconder. Any councillors have any questions? Or otherwise, I'll ask the staff to just give a brief overview of the procedures. Could you start there? If you guys want to give it.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just to note that this continues the conversation that we had via the councillor briefing a couple of weeks ago. So the draft social media procedures that are included here supports the social media policy, which was adopted by council on 31 October 2022. And as per that resolution, social media policy would not come into effect until the adoption of supporting procedures, which was contingent on the delivery of that training that was facilitated in late July as well. And there's further background there in terms of the engagement the council had with the Office of Local Government on developing the model social media policy as well, and the various briefings that we've held with councillors over the past 12 months to discuss both the policy and now the procedures as well.
Thank you. Councillors, any questions? If not, the motion's been put by councillor Jamieson and seconded by councillor Simonton. I'll put the motion. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
All those against? Declare it carried. And we go to the last item of business, which is FIN 033-23. It's the draft sustainable procurement policy. Councillors, if I could have a mover and a seconder. Moved by councillor Marnie. Seconded by councillor Facaria. Councillors, does anyone have any questions on this one?
Yes, to the chair.
Yes.
The first question is, it goes to page 61, which talks about anti-competitive practices. Council must not engage in practices that are anti-competitive or collusive. We sometimes have a select group of tenderers, and we often give it to them all the time. Are we going to go into open tendering? Because I really do believe we need to get away from just a select group of tenderers that we use all the time. Now, I'm not saying it happens all the time, because I've actually seen situations that we received 4 tenderers, but you know, some of them were not acceptable, etc. But how do we deal with open tendering, or do we deal with open tendering, or do we only deal with the people that are they're on our list accredited?
To the director?
Yeah, through you, Madam Chair. So I think all different, it depends on the activity, because there can be situations where they use like a state government contract or a local government contract that's pre-qualified and gone through tests there, so that you can see the same person or the same company, so probably a company pop up, that because they've gone through the relevant procurement steps to go on that panel, and there's usually a panel on there as well. We do checks internally to look at spend with particular companies to make sure we are seeing a variety of use, that we're not always sticking with one company. We also though have advantages being like on things like the SS Rock contract that does add, like it helps our capacity to engage on a more larger scale. In terms of tendering though, that is generally open. They use the software vendor panel and people can participate. I think the difficulty is the time and the requirement to, like, there's a lot of paperwork that's required. So some companies might not put in based on the timing and the amount of resources that go into putting in tenders, but that's the requirement that we have. So I think that can sort of preclude certain people. Your smaller businesses for large scale projects might not have the resources to prepare the tender documents and things like that. But that's the I guess the legal system we're in requires that tender process to be rigor.
But is there anything we can do to assist them? Because I find, and I'm only making giving you an opinion, that some of our amenities blocks in the park at $1.5 million, in my experience, I could build a 2-story house with luxury toilets and bathrooms, etc., for $1.5 million. So is there any way we can open that up? Because those amenities buildings got 6 toilets and a couple of change rooms, and can't see the money in it. Do they actually intentionally add a costing, a premium, because they're tendering for a, call it a government job as such?
Through you, Madam Chair, I think there's been commentary that we'd probably not be paying the lower end of the scale if you were doing your work yourself, because there's probably higher expectations placed on them in terms of insurance, and like if something went wrong, there'd be a lot more scopes. And we do place emphasis on ensuring quality and meeting, so the financial checks on all of those things, they have to be a well-established company. We'd have quantitative surveyors as well review cost of works of the proposals to make sure that they're relative. But that is a common question. I can take it on notice and check with the team if there's anything more we can do to promote competitiveness through the tender process.
I feel
There'll be some educational pieces in how to submit a tender and stuff like that.
a specification about that big, and drawing about that big just to do an amenities block is not really attractive to a lot of builders. So anyway, I'll just leave that.
And then
Yeah.
maybe there's a procurement conference coming up for local government, so maybe they can take that question there and talk about it. I think it would be a prevalent question given that the rising cost of doing work. So I'll maybe they should throw it out to the sector and see what everyone's doing.
Thank you,
Thank
Director.
you.
The other one that I've got a question on, 9.1, page 63, or page 7 of this, it says the splitting of purchase requirements into components and/or succession orders for the same or similar works, goods or services for the purposes of avoiding a policy requirement is not permitted. Please explain.
So because through you, Madam Chair, sorry, because we have thresholds, so you don't want to get into a situation where an officer may, to avoid paperwork or going to the market, might split and say they're ordering something that does add up to 50,000 and requires a number of quotes. They might say, I'll just order it in batches of 5,000 over a number of periods. So it goes below the threshold to go to the market. And so it's not common, but someone that might want to avoid paperwork and testing the market can split. But that's where doing the reports on creditor and spend with suppliers is important to monitor that.
That's interesting. The last question I have is suppliers that are required to comply with the legislation must provide relevant details. This is on the same page, 7.2. It's talking about including any occurrences of modern slavery or human rights violations. When you're talking about modern slavery, you're talking about people being locked up to do work. But what about people that are paid $1 a day? That's a form of modern slavery?
Through you, Madam Chair, I'm not an expert in the Act, but I think it covers a lot more elements. So it talks about age of workers, it talks about probably fair pay conditions, and it covers a whole wealth that's not, my understanding, slave intention. Like there's other elements to it that go through it. Yeah, it's not the sort of, I guess, the Hollywood version of it.
Through the chair
Yeah.
to the mayor, it was in the last term of parliament, it was carried, and it covers all that. It's all about, how workers are exploited, and all those things are included.
There are a lot of the companies we use and where they get their products, if it's overseas and that's probably going to be where it's get harder and harder, the level of how far removed the product is from but it still happens locally as well. So it's just being conscious of those things, that there are relevant checks in place and put the expectation on suppliers that are doing business with us that we expect compliance with that. And that they demonstrate what they're doing as well.
I did say it was my last question, second last question. I think you know my views on acronyms, through the chair. 7.3, RFP, RFQ and RFT.
Would you like?
That's page 63. 7. Council will include modern slavery criterions in RFP, RFQ and RFT.
Yeah, through you, Madam Chair. So the first one I think needs to be added to the definitions, which is request for proposal, then request for quotation, request for tender are included in the definition, but it wouldn't hurt if it's easier. We can just actually refer to it in the policy and then the abbreviation there.
My view on, here, anyway, I won't go into them. Acronyms are not my favourite.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. That's fine. Thank you.
Any
Madam
other
Chair.
questions?
Yeah, can I just ask for, just to give an overview of why these sort of things, that what the changes are? And then after that, maybe it's already in there, but the environmental, because we're sort of trying to go to, when we're doing clean energy, what our targets are, is that really included in this, that we're doing environmentally conscious?
So you have the things that are covered under the environmental resilience action plan. Is,
To you.
yep,
Through you, Madam Chair, I'll probably talk more broadly in that it's hard with a policy to try and encapsulate all the actions of council. So you'll find with some policies it will just refer, and it's really then in the documentation. So even the modern slavery one, in the tender documents, there's actually a scoring element in there that is used. So when someone bids, they have to demonstrate that. So it starts to put the onus on officers when they're assessing and calling for tenders or quotes, that there's a criteria that might assess. So for certain projects, when they're scoping it out and it has more of an environmental impact, that might be a higher weighting criteria when they're assessing. So it can't be, I guess, written black and white. It's more a reference to consider it for the specific type of project. So that's definitely for all of the elements in here. And the reason the change occurred is that we are adopting a lot more positions that have an impact. Procurement sort of does touch on whether it's modern slavery or environmental sustainable decisions. So when we're making those decisions, we need to consider that. So that's the impetus for adding it into the policy here.
Thank you.
any other questions? Councillor Martin?
Just wanted to say some really big gains here with the environmental side of things and fighting slavery and also child protection guidelines. That's fantastic. A few months ago, I raised a notice of motion about the local government, Office of Local Government issuing guidelines for contract extensions, not new contracts, but existing contracts and amendments, and apparently there are none. And we put a question to the last minister and didn't get an answer. And I think I raised it in a couple of months ago of the new government. Has there been any response? Do you know?
Through you, Madam Chair, if I can take that on notice and get back to you. I am not aware of one, but I'll chase it up tomorrow.
So it's New South Wales government guidelines for contract extensions.
Yeah, issued by the OLG.
It was a notice of motion from memory. I remember it actually.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Otherwise, it's been moved by Councillor Marnie and seconded by Councillor Fakara. I'll put the motion. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Right.
All those against? I'll declare it carried. And there being no other business on the agenda, I will declare the meeting closed at 6:21 p.m.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you.
Thank you.